Provisional REM's paranoia. Like holding the Oni by the neck, you need to listen when you're spoken to. Pushing the back of a wheelchair, Rem was talking while walking about the grounds she was captive in, when the words of Katia, the owner of that wheelchair, made her eyes go wide. In the imperial capital Ljubljana is the estate of Prime Minister Berstets Vondarfen. That was where Rem was held captive. Being burdened with the roles of healer and hostage, it was where she had been put under house arrest. While the position of a hostage might have a dangerous ring to it, she had not been as forcefully restricted, and aside from not being allowed to exit the mansion, she had no restrictions to her roaming within its grounds. While on one part, there were some rooms she was forbidden from entering, it was still exceptional treatment. And while under that exceptional environment, Rem was still not so sweet so as to remain a slavish captive. She thought about finding some way to acquire even a single method of certain escape as soon as possible, and to get away from this life of house arrest. Perhaps having seen through that mentality, Katia's gaze was particularly severe. With that intense look, Katia bit her own hand's nail and said, "It's not something you said, but even then it has me on edge. There's limits to how rude you can be. Are you trying to ridicule me?" "No, I never. Someone like me. A woman who can't even go out for a walk without needing help. All you need to do is give me whatever random half-hearted reply you need to. That's what you're thinking." "Right. Just fuck off." Lending no ears to Rem's protests, Katia lowered her frizzy olive-haired head and began a slew of self-deprecation. An exchange that happened quite often, or rather, an exchange she could say she was quite used to. Katia's outbursts. This woman she had met at the mansion had a rather difficult-to-approach aspect to her. However, fine, leave me alone, do as you please. Katia-san, WHWHwa. Please listen to me, and I would have you stop speaking ill of yourself. You can do both, right? 1, 2. Hick. Wrapping around the wheelchair, Rem asserted so strongly while meeting Katia's eyes. Being told so, Katia blinked her eyes and drooped her head with a red face, silent. She was a cute one, honest and obedient. Her blood simply rose to her head a little too fast. Who do you think Rem had spent all this time with before being dragged here? If you compared Katia to Priscilla, she was like a newborn puppy. That aside, I apologize for making you worried. It is not that I was not listening to you. I simply wanted to look at the surroundings a little bit. The surroundings, you say, this isn't just a garden, doesn't have even a single interesting thing to it. Quite right, this does not seem to be a garden meant to entertain people. Katia did just have an outburst, but it was Rem's behavior that had made her do so. When she apologized for that, Katia, though still red in the face, properly humored her conversation. It was just like Katia said. Their surroundings, the courtyard, which was where they carried their feet under the pretense of a stroll, Rem looked at it with her light blue eyes narrowed, reflecting its master's nature. Inside the estate, the buildings and furnishings, while all opulent, were so utilitarian so as to be dry. The courtyard gave the most extreme impression of this since, while it made up for all the greenery lacking in the mansion's scenery, the real purpose of it was in the landing platforms for the flying dragons that occasionally came by. There was a reasonable amount of wind produced by the flying dragons when landing and taking off, so it was clean of the decoration of even a single flower that could scatter petals. "There's no fun in watching," was only a natural thing for Katia to say. "And yet, what are you trying to get from gazing at a garden like this?" "Well, I did not come here in search of amusement. I wondered if I could find even a single thread of some kind to escape from here." "Hey you just apologized for making me worry, didn't you? In that case, don't make these kinds of jokes." "Jokes? Stop, dumbass. That's the scariest response you could give. It's scary." "Dumbass?" Looking at the behavior of Rem, who was tilting her neck, Katia opened her eyes wide and panicked. It actually was not a joke. However, she had to pretend it was a joke, or else who knows how long Katia's heart might remain disturbed. As such, Rem poked her tongue out and said, "It's a joke. Gazing at the garden is, that's right, it is because there is really no other place to experience the outside. Let us leave it at that. I'm a bit concerned about how you phrased that, but it feels like it'd be nothing good if I dug deeper, so I won't ask." Rem's words, overflowing with consideration, were somewhat lacking in effectiveness, it seemed. While Rem slumped her shoulders at the misfire, Katia breathed a sigh while looking at her and said, "Don't feel down, I really don't understand you." That is no wonder indeed, as I do not really understand myself either. And how am I supposed to react to that response? How am I to know what's appropriate to say and what isn't appropriate to say? It's a liability. A liability, in fact, that amnesia. Rolling the wheels, she grabbed onto by herself. Katia turned around and screamed in anger at Rem. A result of that statement with no ill will. If Rem had to say it was in fact meant in consideration of her, as such, Katia's reaction was terribly upsetting, though she had purposefully spoken of her own amnesia in an attempt to make her think she was not too bothered by it. Haya, being with you makes me tired. Does this happen to everyone else? I do not make much of an attempt to change my behavior to the tune of others, but Katia would be the only one to raise their voice to such an extent like this. Why you picking a fight just because I can't move my legs? Once again, Rem strained a smile as something was received in a different way to what she had meant. Somehow or other, Katia remained in a stance which did not allow for her to push her wheelchair, and so Rem took the cane held under her arm and firmly stretched herself up. Once so done, Katia, who saw Rem's actions and cane, said, "Hey, for what reason are your legs not working?" "Unfortunately, many things happen to my body that I have no knowledge of." "What the hell is with your body? It's terrifying." "Well, I guess I'm also on the same boat of not knowing my body that well. I don't know why it is that I'm so sickly," and the like. Katia reflexively raised her voice and quickly reflected on herself. Looking at her hair whirl as she held her head down, Rem looked down at the cane that propped her own body up. This cane was something that was made for her by the people of Shudrak at their settlement for her impaired legs. She suffered to get used to it, so it was likely that the original Rem had not used a cane. Somehow there are some things my body is used to, because it seems a cane was not one of them. So, it's not like you forgot how to walk along with the rest of your memories then. I am not that dumb. Was that perhaps a joke? Take notice. Just move on, dumbass. Once so said, Rem reflected on the fact that she had made a waste of Katia's joke. As soon as she said it, her face quickly turned red, so Katia must have mustered quite a bit of courage as well. With her face still red, Katia clicked her tongue and said, "Come on. Whatever I say is hilarious, then how about the opposite? What do you remember?" I'm asking, what is it you remember? It'll be fine once I hear that." Implicitly, since Katia still planned to talk to Rem, she was trying to find a way to not fail in conversation with Rem in the future. Her thoughtfulness made her happy, but also troubled Rem could not remember anything about herself. She wanted to respond to Katia's expectations, but she could not. She racked her head, as she simply did not want to stay quiet forever and trouble Katia. "Now that you mention it, it seems that I have a twin sister." "I feel like you've mentioned that, yes. Do you remember her?" "No. What I remember is just that she looked very much like me, and was a very reliable person, or so I have heard." While speaking, what she remembered was the voice of Subaru, who wanted to talk when he showed his face during unnoteworthy times as they were traveling from the settlement to town, and the content of his talks. Though she thought it was done with good intentions, Subaru's talks about Rem before she lost her memories were incessant. She did not believe those were fabrications of his, and no small number of them were convincing as well. Particularly, the ones related to the existence of her twin sister were verified to be true by a twinge deep in her bosom. However, being told about things she did not remember was a half-and-half bitter and sweet feeling. Though it was after she honestly told him that Subaru reined it in. Once she had heard Rem's answer, Katia narrowed her eyes with a and said, "What kind of person is that?" "I heard she's someone who looks well at her surroundings and is very attentive to details. And that while her slightly mean side is her one flaw, that was still the way she expressed her sisterly love." She had no way to confirm it, but nevertheless, Rem half believed and half doubted that high praise. Even though he had prefaced it by saying she was reliable, that was still way too reliable. Perhaps one could say Subaru only saw the good parts of that sister. Or maybe, perhaps for the sake of Rem, who was missing her memories, he was avoiding referencing any of her bad parts. Whatever the case, it appears he's giving her quite the special treatment. If she really is that splendid of a sister, I would wish she could come help me anytime soon. That phrasing felt kinda thorny there. Even if you might not be conscious of it, she's your sister, right? Even though I am not conscious of it, she is my sister, though I did not particularly mean that in a harsh manner. Hearing the words of Katia, whose cheeks had slightly stiffened, Rem leisurely shook her head side to side. She was aware of the fact that it was an unreasonable protest herself, but she did not intend to be harsh to her yet unseen sister. If forced to say, perhaps her antipathy towards the one who let her know had slipped onto her tongue. On Rem's self-awareness, Katia followed her words with a "be that as it may." When I hear about your twin, I really can't believe that you'd have such an outstanding sister. What do you mean by that? WL, you have so many personality flaws, don't you? What? It's nothing to get angry about. At that statement that made her doubt her ears, Rem asked her to repeat it, and Katia, seeing that, spoke in falsetto. But that Rem had gotten angry was just unthinkable. She had merely just asked her to repeat the libel she had no clue about. I am not angry. Don't talk such nonsense. Well, you made that face, and no matter how you look at it. Did I not say that I'm not angry? See, you're angry. Hanging her head in despondency, Katia looked at Rem reproachfully while biting her nails. Putting a hand to her forehead, Rem gave a deep sigh at that gaze and sat her and herself down. She really was not angry, but if she was being perceived as angry, then that must be revised. In the first place, we're getting off topic. I didn't ask you about your twin. I asked you about the person that told you about her. The person that told me about her. Why are you interested in that person? Well, that's because when you talk about that person, your face kind of. My face. Tilting her head, Rem had genuine doubts about the fact Katia held an interest. However, when being questioned, Katia let out a small ah and sighed, and then her eyes swam. Then, after a moment of hesitation, "And not gonna say it after all. You seem like you'd get angry." Why? I will get angry. Look, just like I thought, you're angry. I was saying in advance that I will be angry. I am not angry now, though. At Katia's half-hearted attitude, Rem tapered her lips as if expressing her displeasure. When she hesitated strangely, she was made extremely curious about it somehow. And what's more, when the topic involved Subaru, it was like a little fishbone clearly asserted its presence inside of Rem. Meaning that she needed to extract it, this dangerous foreign object that would not disappear no matter how much time passed. As such, please speak at once. That is for your sake, Katia-san. A threat, that's pretty much just a threat. This is also for Katia-san's sake. You're absolutely lying, don't lie with a nonchalant face. Katia, who put up quite an intense resistance, moved the wheels of her wheelchair and attempted to escape. It was quite a risk for Katia, but unfortunately for Rem, her speed was slower than a jog. Once she put her body weight strongly on her cane, Rem began chasing after the escaping Katia. Also, a guard, who was looking after the pathway, turned his gaze to the two's game of tag. Waving a hand to indicate there was no need to worry, Rem hurriedly chased after the escaping Katia, cornered her, and caught her. Fucking shit. You talked of being a lady of nobility, yet is it fine for you to mouth such foul words? I also said both school and house tutors were useless, didn't I? So persistent. Rem held on tightly to a wheel with one hand, and even though Katia tried to fight against it with both hands, the wheel would not move. The fight ending from her complete lack of force in a contest of strength, Katia went limp. At that loser Katia, the winner, Rem, called out now to her, I have caught you, so please calmly speak. What were you about to say? But it's not like it was that important. If it was not that important, then can you not say it? What are you, a torturer that won't listen? I'll say it, I just need to say it right. Meeting Rem's demands, Katia finally spoke. Somehow, Rem had turned excessively obstinate too, but having this exchange with Katia was fun, so she hoped she would forgive this as an extended category of their friendship as well. In contrast to that pleasant thought from Rem, Katia's side was putting on a face like she had made her pathetic peace with things, even if Rem said she would accept it placidly no matter what she told her. To Rem thinking that, Katia heaved a very deep sigh and said, It's just when you talk about that someone your face relaxes or something. What? Look at that, you're angry, aren't you? At Rem questioning her with a grave voice, Katia raised a shriek like she was about to cry. The reason being Katia had wonderfully poked at the "if you tell me" that bit of Rem who had thought, no matter what you tell me. My face was relaxed. That does not seem logical. It is displeasing. Man, I'm done talking with you, Hick. Please wait. Let us talk this out. This misunderstanding is a misunderstanding needing clearing. Katia attempted to escape, but circling around behind her hastily, Rem grabbed onto the handles of her wheelchair and once again put the cane back under her arm. That concluded the walk, and she would correct the previous wrong impression on the way to returning Katia to her room. Save me! You people, come save me! Having her wheelchair irreparably pushed by Rem, Katia sought help from the guards on patrol. The guards turned towards that appeal, but with a wave of Rem's hand, they assented, and Katia's complaints could be assumed to be ignored. Though it was difficult whether that should be called a neglect of their duties or a high crisis awareness. In the first place, if we are to talk about my face, then, Katia-san, you as well, when you talk about your fiancé, you make a face you don't show to others. Hick, don't just say whatever. Dumbass. Let go. I'm breaking things off with you. Break off. Flapping her legs desperately, Katia gave a meager resistance. While hearing her voice, Rem did not slow the speed of her legs with the intention of discussing with her till the end. While Rem had forgotten many things, there was one thing that she had clearly confirmed. Herself, before losing her memories, surely was also thoroughly jerked around by that boy. End.